Hello, you are welcome to class once again. We are back where we stopped in world history, the ancient history. So we've examined the ancient civilization, the civilization in the Middle East. And so today we're going to look at the Greeks, was a very prominent people in ancient history. Now, the Greeks occupied a place called the Danube region, and they were amalgam of various group of people that come from different places as early as around 2000 BC. In fact, initially they were barbarians. It is when they began to evolve and study, they became learned people and they began to call other people barbarians. So, historically, those who call other people barbarians were once barbarians. And so the Greeks came from various places to settle there. The first group that came, we call them the Achaeans. That was the first wave of people that came to that region and settled. After that, you have the Ionians also came and settled there. And then we have the Durians who also came and settled there. That was around 1100 BC. So all these people came to that region and they met the Minoan civilization, which we mentioned the other time. And so it's like they learned this civilization and improve upon it. And so that was why it was easier for them to, they just made use of what they have met and then improve upon it, and they became civilized people. Now, there was the Mycenaean era. That was the era of oral tradition when they wrote down history of their gods and activities of their gods. That was when the issues of Trojan and the rest, all those their plays were written down. And then after a while, the new Greek culture emerged. And by 776 BC, they started Olympics. They started Olympics Games, which was their central sport that bring all the Greek city-states and police together. At the end of every 4 years, they will not. They fight all the time, but at the end of the 4 years, they will not fight. They will now come together and have sport to relax. Then later, the following year, they will go back into their fighting system. Now, in the pattern of development of the Greeks, they had what we call city-states. That means a city is a state, and each state is independent with a self-governing system. So no state is under another state. But then, anytime there is an external problem, all the city-states will come together as Greeks. They know themselves as Greeks. And so, even if they are fighting, they are always fighting one another. If they are fighting one another, and then they hear that there's an external aggression coming, they will abandon all their local fights and team up and face the external aggression. And when they have conquered, they will resume back to their own local fight. So that's the way the Greeks were doing. They value their citizenship. I'm a Greek. No, they value it so much. And because their land was bad, they needed so many things that they didn't have, they began to travel out. In fact, they began to travel on the sea, they began to produce boats and all that. So they were involved in foreign partnership. They began to send ambassadors quite on time to different nations and began to do international trade. And they were also opening colonies. Maybe a city-state will go and open a place as its colony. This one will open the other place as its colony, especially when you fight and conquer. You convert the place to your own colony. Then the Greeks had a fighting culture called phalanx. It's a special invented way of fighting that made them to triumph in those days because they were the only one fighting that way. And so they used it as an advantage over several other people group. Now, one good thing we need to learn from them was that as at the time the rest of the world depended on the kings and the gods, the Greeks grew beyond that level. They were there, but they grew beyond that level. And then they entered the era of individualism. They began to do a retrospection. There was free reasoning. They were asking questions. So that among the Greeks, if a father says to the child, stand up, and the child stood up, the father will be crying that he has given birth to a fool. So he expected the child to ask the father, why should I stand up? So that's how the Jews began to ask questions, which gave birth to philosophy, modern philosophy. And that's why they were able to produce those great philosophers, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and all the rest of them. Then the Jews had a common heritage. They are from different city-states, but they believed that they were all Greeks. And they have one language, which was the Greek language that brought all of them together. And also, as at the time the rest of the world were accumulating food, materials, and all the people were fighting war. Why do you fight a war of dominance? You fight to conquer so that you carry their properties and keep for yourself. The Jews already the Greeks already moved beyond that level. They were already doing education. They were already doing philosophy, rhetorics, law, architecture, algebra, and several others. So when the rest of the world were still looking for bows and arrows to kill and to fight, the Greeks were already inventing. They were already thinking. They were already coming up with new ways of doing things. So while the rest were still, they themselves were actually fighting, but they encourage thinking, going to school, reasoning. Initially, it was their boys who were going to school. Then later on, they began to involve the girls also, so that they also will go to school. So those were the things that aided the Greeks in their evolution in civilization. Also, the governmental system of the Jews today, we say that democracy started from the Jews, but from the Greeks. But the Greeks did not start with democracy. They began with oligarchy, where few people were in charge, dominating the rest. Eventually, they moved into aristocracy. And then from aristocracy, they ended in democracy. And it is that democracy they have given to the world now as a gift. So if I ask, what are the things that the Greeks have given to the world as gift? One of them is democracy. Another one is Olympics, which they gave to the world. And then the Greek, the third one is education. Even the father of medicine, Hippocrates, is from the Greek. So, and then as you study in various fields, you will always come across Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, their writings, what they said. Then in literature, rhetorics, you will always come across these people. In law. So the Greeks highly contributed to modern civilization, and they must be valued and treasured for that. Now, there were two major city-states at that time, Sparta and Athens. The Spartans were a military state. Their own emphasis was to train their children to become soldiers. Athenians, their own was to educate the people. So one was focused on strength, the other one was focused on ideology. And so both of them were always at loggerheads, fighting for so many years like that. They were antagonistic of each other, and there were smaller city-states who shared themselves. Some follow Corinth, some follow Athens. So that's the way they were doing until when the Persians wanted to come and destroy them. So they teamed up together, all the nation of the Greeks, and they fought the Persians for many years until they were able to liberate themselves, that they were not destroyed by the Persians. And so that's a very great thing, that unity can actually do great things. But unfortunately for them, after they have conquered the external enemies, they fought what we call the war of self-destruction. In fact, they were the one who destroyed themselves. They brought themselves down in that generation. And so they were in that state until King Philip of Macedonia gave birth to his son by name Alexander the Great. So this Alexander the Great was a very unique son. The father handed him over to Aristotle for training. He said, train this boy. And that's another lesson we need to learn from the Greeks. They don't pamper their children. They subject them to rigorous training. They subject them to suffering so that they can become better. They go through toughness and system of hardness. Now, one thing is also peculiar to the Greeks. Death meant nothing. In fact, among the Greeks, if you go to war and return, you are a coward. Because they believe that heroes die in war. That means you ran away from them. So the situation is such that if in this Greek, there were several instances that they will consult the gods, and the gods will say, okay, for you to conquer in this war, let one person will die for the people. Somebody should jump inside the river, die for the people as sacrifice. In the land of the Greeks, unlike in several other people of the world, it will be difficult to get somebody. But among the Greeks, the king will quickly jump out and die. Because glory was more important to the Greeks than life. And so dying meant nothing to them. In fact, there was an instance when they went to war and they conquered. So the person who came back to report to the people, he ran from there. He race of death. He ran, we call that battle the Battle of Marathon. So he ran, once he declared to the people, we have won, he fell down and died. So that is the peculiar nature of the Greeks, to die. All that matters is glory. Glory, once they are going to gain glory by dying, they are ready to die. So glory is superior. So such a people are ready to pay any price for glory. And so King Philip of Macedonia, when he gave the son who's supposed to be king after him, he gave it to Aristotle. He said, train this boy, all manners of wisdom and knowledge, impart this boy. And that's how Alexander the Great went for training, became trained, became very intelligent, knowledgeable, and he returned back. When he returned back, he already had a unique personality. Anytime his father went to war and the news came that the father had conquered and people are rejoicing for victory, he will be sad. And so when you ask him and say, Alexander, your father conquered in war, you're supposed to be happy. He said, if my father conquered all the battles, which one will I fight? So because in the land of the Greeks, they don't train their children to inherit their property. They train their children to have more properties than the parents. So the thing of pride is that you are able to produce greater sons and daughters than yourself. And so the children are always eager to build their own empire. Nobody wants to just inherit what someone else labored for. It's not a thing of pride. It's not a thing of glory to the Greeks. And so they invested majorly in the education of the children, exposed them to tough lifestyle, to be able to withstand challenges, so that they will be greater than their parents. That's just the concept. They must be greater than their parents. And so Alexander the Great was like that. So that when people come from various places to the palace to see his father, he will engage them in conversation, trying to know, do you come from? How are the people there? Are they warlike? So when he heard that the people are very strong, he will be very happy, because he wanted to conquer strong people, not weak people. Because you know that conquering people that are regarded as being strong will bring glory. And that's how Alexander the Great continued in the palace until when his father was killed. So when the father was killed, he began his campaign. And his campaign was with a very clear vision. I don't want to be the king of the Greeks like my father. I want to conquer the world. And he was able to raise his own soldiers. He didn't inherit his father's army. He raised his own soldiers. He only went with his uncle, who decided to follow him. And he began to fight from one place to another. So that's how the campaign of Alexander the Great started. And the vision was not just to conquer the world, but to impose the lifestyle of the Greeks, the language of the Greeks on the people. And if you look at it today, many things about the Greeks are imposed on all of us. You talk about the academic gown, you talk about the language Jesus was speaking when he came. It wasn't Greek language, it wasn't Hebrew language. He was speaking Greek, because Greek language dominated the entire peninsula. Even many years after the collapse of Greek Empire, they were still in Rome. Instead of Latin, they were still speaking Greek. So it took generations that the Greeks were still in charge. And up to today, they are still in charge of our education. We still talk about what the Greek philosophers said, did, and all that. So it's a great lesson we need to learn. Alexander conquered with knowledge and with weapons. But he knows that if you conquer people with weapons, it does not last long. But when we conquer them ideologically, conquer them in the area of language, culture, he said it will remain with them. And that is what the Europeans learned when they were conquering the world. They imposed their language on the people. Just we are speaking English now, some are speaking French and all that. Even after the imperialism has ended, the cultural imperialism remains. So all these things are borrowed or copied from Alexander the Great. Like we said, he was a very great warrior, and he fought several wars and won. History says that he was faster than rumor. In other words, before he gets to you, before you hear he is coming, he's already at your border. But when he gets to your border that way, he will not fight you. He will send to you and say, I am around to fight, but I will wait for you to prepare. If it takes you months, just prepare. Because I will not fight people who are not prepared. I will never steal my victory. So he will wait. It is when you say we are now prepared, he will come and fight you, and he will still win. That is Alexander the Great for you. A man of many parts. So Alexander was like that. And another thing we need to learn from him is he was very focused. He was very determined. He knew what he wanted, and he would always go for it. He was always in front, leading his army. In fact, with the resources he left the Greeks with, that thing shouldn't have lasted him for more than 2 months. But he was determined. His faith was very strong. He believed he was going to win. He believed he was going to achieve his aim, and he eventually achieved his aim. Next class, we're going to see his encounter with the Jews. Oh, very interesting. And we'll look at how he died and what happened after his death.